Thank you, Ron. Well, Ron already introduced me by name, so the talk you're about to see is on TSA Luggage locks, and it's going to give details about the flaws in them and how to make master keys for them. But first, a little bit of background information. I run IronGeek.com. I specialize in, well, posting a lot of videos from conferences, strangely enough. Record them, put them up. I go to about, I think this is my last one this year, and I think it's been 24, thereabouts. Anyway, I post a lot of video. I have an interest in InfoSec education. I don't know everything. I'm just a geek with time on my hands. I may get something wrong. If I do, let me know. I'm also a senior information security consultant at TrustedSec and the co-founder of DerbyCon, a conference that gets about 2,000 people in Louisville, Kentucky. Thanks to all these people who have helped me with the research on this, and some of them have actually been giving presentations as well on the TSA lock system. Some of them have different focuses. Like Doc Sim, he got me some of the, I think, the initial pictures. Devian Olaf as well, he's one of my lock mentors. Lady Merlin, I think she actually first found the pictures online. Johnny Chris has been working on 3D printing. Xylitol is the first person, to my knowledge, who actually came up with 3D printed schematics. And the other people as well who've helped me find pictures. And Dossman is probably my lock mentor. He has a black badge for DEF CON for lock picking. So yeah, he's awesome. First of all, why this talk? Well, I'm going to cover why not this talk. If you actually pick me, how many people are lock pickers? Do it for a hobby. Got a few people. How many people know that TSA locks are generally crap? Even the people who weren't lock pickers knew it. Because they probably aren't lock pickers, but they still got one open. So yes, they're easy to rake and pick open. And yes, the bag is easy to open other ways. Unless you have a zipper system that locks in place on one spot on the baggage, what they can do is take a zipper, or take a pin, go through the zipper, open it up, and then just take the two locked together zippers and put it back together. You can't do that with a hard luggage, but you can usually rake one of these locks open pretty easy. Now, while lock sport people know this, I really haven't seen a talk done on this subject until here recently. And also, I was just interested in the technical challenge of reverse engineering the key. So I wanted to take the lock, take it apart, and it's kind of like this. If you have the source code to something and the encryption keys are in the source code, you can own the entire thing. That's the equivalent of a TSA lock. Now, some people made a big deal about the photo leak, but you really don't need it. You can take apart a lock and figure it out, and I'm going to show how I went about that. And this is also kind of a parable for why security through obscurity fails. So what are TSA-approved locks? Well, way back in 2003, TSA demanded the ability to get into all luggage, which means they'd start cutting locks if you put a lock on there. Obviously, this started pissing off a lot of flyers. So a couple people at the same time came up with a system to where they'd have a set of master keys so they could get into the locks without having to bother anybody. And I'm going to grab something else out of my coat. I just remembered something I need. All right. Now, what about Canada? Apparently, recently, Canada actually started adopting the TSA lock system as well because they wanted to be able to get into baggage. And there was a whole lot of hubbub about April of 2014 last year. I'm trying to get follow-ups on this. But I don't have a whole lot of information on how legal stuff is. To my knowledge, here's what happens. The CA TSA agents are not allowed to cut off your locks. They have to contact one of the airport folks, one of the airline folks, and have them come find you. But they can't find you. One of the airline folks, not one of the CA TSA people, break the lock so they can physically inspect it. So it's a little bit nicer than the TSA system in America, because the TSA system in America, they cut a lot of TSA locks too. And I think that's because a lot of TSA locks are crap and they don't hold up, or people are just too lazy to get the key. There's two major brands. Travel Sentry, that was by John Vermillion, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. And this company oversees standards. They don't actually make their own locks. They license the standards to Master Lock, Avis, other people. Well, actually, Avis designed some of the stuff and then got it approved from them. But they're basically a approval body. It makes money off of it. Safe Sky's actually developed their own lock. He developed a couple of patents, and these two people had similar ideas about the same time. John Vermillion, he knew way back, I think in the 70s, that a lot of baggage people had multiple keys that would open a large percentage of the luggage out there, because they couldn't just leave a bag sitting around unopened. They had to know what was in it if it was left behind. So he knew about that, and so he came up with the Travel Sentry system, and David Schrapp came up with the Safe Sky system, and then eventually people started suing each other. Both of these, what do you expect? I don't know how litigious Canada is, but America is pretty litigious. So these are the two standards out there, and both were accepted by the TSA in the United States and over here in Canada, as well as apparently I think Israel and Australia have adopted it recently. I'm not sure both of them. But yeah, so the recent interest from all this came because I think it was Lady Miller that first found the picture someone had taken of the TSA keys and posted it. And there was a bit of a hubbub about printing keys based on just seeing a picture of it. Because you can look at the depths, look at the bitting on the key, and by numbering, and you know how big it is, be able to reproduce the key. Problem with TSA keys, you may not have the blank for it, so there's a lot of information that's still needed. But a whole bunch of pictures started coming out of the TSA keys. And I first saw these, actually, I was first trying to just take apart locks and figure out how they worked, but then someone pointed me these pictures. Then eventually some really good high-def pictures came out that were in a PDF, apparently, that was on a Travel Sentry site. You didn't need to put a password in to get the PDF, you just had to know it existed there. So that got leaked out, and well, there you go. This is the patents on the various TSA locks, and I'll post these slides later. I just have that in there mostly as notes from my own research, because I want to figure out the internal design. Like that's inside the TSA 006, there's actually diagrams that may give you some depth ideas. Though I think I looked at it and it doesn't look quite like the modern TSA lock, and I believe they may have switched out the keys. A lot of this is conjecture on my part, because I can't find a lot of information. The designers of the various locks are these folks. This is partly based on some work that a gentleman did. I'm going to link to his article again later on, where he, I don't know where he found out who did what, but apparently did that in patent searches, gave me this particular information. All right, the functionality of these locks. They work in different ways. You generally have one where you have a master key and a user key. Master key opens all of them. The user key, in theory, only opens that one lock or a certain subset of locks. There's only so many possible combinations and cuts you can make as far as depths. A lot of them, though, use combinations for the user and use little dials, and the TSA uses the key to open them. So, you know, that's fairly easy to illustrate. I should have one of those right here to give you an idea. Come on, wake up. Oh, that's not what I want to do. There we go. As you can see on this one, we have the little dial, and we also have the keyway. So the TSA would use the keyway, and the user, in theory, would use the dial. Except, well, if you reverse engineer everything and make your own keys, it's not really all that difficult to be able to open it anyway. And I'll explain how I did this in a bit. Actually, it was unlocked. So now it's locked. And now it should be unlocked. Number 2 is one of the ones I have working the best and the most locks. I'm still working some on figuring out the best possible key blank for it. But anyway, a lot of them are like that. Here's how those dual action work. You see there's one way that the shackle can open and another way that shackle can open. One uses the combination, one uses a cylinder. Maybe I should say plug instead. That one was a wafer lock. If we were talking about ones, though, that use 2 types of keys, they do this via a master keying system on pin tumbler locks. Essentially, you have your driver pins and your key pins. Most locks just have driver pins and key pins, but these master key ones have wafers in the middle, too. This is the way it works if you have a key that opens everything at work, but another key that only opens some doors. It's usually much the same system. And what these little wafers do is it makes it 2 different levels that the lock will open at. So that's how they master key those. And I have a bunch of pin tumbler locks that are like that. The problem with this system is it also makes it a little easier to rake open, just randomly try things, because there's 2 different shear lines you can meet and actually get it to turn. There's also wafer locks. Wafer locks work by, essentially, once you have the right key in it, it lifts the wafers out of a channel, and then you can turn the lock. Now, hopefully, I can actually see where I put one for demonstration purposes. And I'm not sure how many demos I can actually do this and keep on time, but we'll get through what we can. So this is number 2. And you see those little wafers? This is the other side. Some of them have channels on both sides. You see how they're kind of dragging against that little metal piece? So it can't move. If you have the right key inserted, let me see. It raises them all to the right levels, and then you can turn. So let me see if it's awfully hard for me to do this when not being like a mirror. But you see how that lifts them in and out of the little metal groove. And that's how wafer locks work, and usually wafer locks are pretty simple to rake. The biggest problem with most of TSA locks is they're so small, it's hard to get a tension tool in them. Now, the way to master a wafer lock is a little bit different if they have a keyed wafer lock. Most of the ones you find with wafer locks are going to have a combination instead, so there's only one key. If they have a 2-key system, well, it would be something like this. They'll have a wafer in there. If it's only one key, where it's lined up like this, and the proper key lifts everything to the right height. Now, the master lock system would have two different heights, and the user key would be the blue and purple, and the TSA key would be the red and the purple. So there's two different keyways, technically, that they could go down to actually be able to open the lock. And there's a fair number that do this particular system, and this is probably going to be too small to easily see, but I'm going to try to do it anyway, if I can find one in here that has that particular scheme. Well, this is a 005. It has a scheme, but it's harder to tell, and it may not come up on camera at all. But if you actually could look down that, you would see there's two different heights on the wafers. See, I'm so used to it being like a mirror. There's two different heights to the wafers, and depending on which way the key goes in, it's either the user key or the TSA key. This one right here gives you a better idea of what I mean. So that side would be the TSA key, and this side would be the user key, and you notice there's two different heights inside that wafer. So example locks. These were some of the first ones that come out, I believe, the TSA 001s. I can't find them anymore. Can't find new ones. Luckily, I was down at HUSETCon, and Jigglers had two of them on the table and gave them to me. I haven't taken them apart yet, but you really don't see them in stores anymore. I don't know if you do up in Canada. I'm assuming not, since the system's even newer up here. I think they've discontinued them. I'm not sure. I thought at one time that the key blank was a 1092 VR from Ilco, but apparently not, and it's not this VR91C either. So I'm still looking around for one. I believe that, I think it was Night Owl maybe, who actually figured out how to file down a blank on the sides to make one work. But that's a little ghetto for my taste. Next up is the TSA 002. This is probably the second most common TSA key, keyway, and that was the one I was demonstrating the key with earlier. There's some tolerance differences. I have a bunch with me, and these are the two different key blanks you can use, and you can order them from a locksmith supply company. You might be able to find them in some hardware stores. Mom and pop hardware stores seem to have more key blanks out there. I ordered mine from HL Flake, and that key looks like this. By the way, notice how it's double-sided. I haven't ever seen any 007 or 002 lock that was truly double-sided, because what it would actually do is only use one side of the bitting. But the reason they put it double-sided is convenience. It doesn't matter which way you put it in, it'll work. And also, it doubles the wear life of the key. I think one of the reasons a lot of luggage gets cut is the key gets used so much, it gets worn down and no longer works. There's also the 003. You rarely see this. It has a weird triangle shape to it. There's the 004, and the 004 is pathetic. I don't know if you can really make it out on that. But I mean, essentially, it is just a turning tool. That is all it is. Now, I made mine out of just a little watered key and just filed things down, and it opens up really easy. Now, some also have these. I've seen also have these alert systems, and if you open it with the key, it pops up a little red thing here so you know it's red. If it's green, no one's opened your lock. But on at least some of the Sesame style locks, you can take a little lock pick, go in underneath the dials, and push them in. And Chris showed me that. Sistrunk showed me that little trick. Oh, by the way, that one you saw earlier, let me actually go back to it, because you just saw it a second ago. This one, if you pick it, it doesn't pop the flag. It only pops the flag if you use the key. Just to let you know. It's not great. So the 004 is probably the most pathetic of them. The 005, you don't see a whole lot. It seems to be just an M2 blank. I have one that works very well on these. This is probably, I'm going to say, the third most common TSA key you see out there. And you can see, again, the double-sidedness of the wafer inside of it. Let me see. 006, until recently, I'd say this is the baddest, well, it's still probably the toughest lock of all of them to beat. It's a double-sided dimple lock. And a dimple lock works just like a normal pin tumbler lock like you saw before, but instead, the pins are on the side of the key. So it's like little holes drilled in the key. And once you have them at the right height, you can turn them. Well, I've only seen these things in Momoa luggage and apparently Proteca, which, I don't know, that could be owned by Momoa for all I know. Or Momova. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that. I believe it's a German company. Anyway, these were designed by Avis, and they usually make pretty good locks. And until recently, I'd never seen one pick. That was till last night, when he did it. Thank you, Brandon. And Brandon did just, Devin Olive, by the way, before this, I tried, Devin Olive tried, Dossman had tried, maybe not for long enough. My friend Cameron tried. None of us got the thing open. My buddy Doug, who used to work with, tried. Then last night, Brandon did it. Twice. In quick succession. Then after he did it, It's kind of like the 4-minute mile. Someone has to do it first before you believe it can be done. So I did it like 2 times that night and maybe more, and then I did it a few more times today. So you can defeat it. Basically, you have to tension it, and then you take like a wave rake and you diddle the pins, and you just kind of wiggle it. And a lot of problems with some dimple locks is, well, it's harder to pick because you have less room to really work it. They usually don't have a whole lot of height differences because there's not a lot of room to have different biddings. To get an idea what I'm talking about, this is essentially another type. This isn't the 006, but this is another example of a dimple lock. And by the way, it's double-sided, so those pins on both sides. So that made it a bear, but we have eventually got it open, at least once we pulled the core out. Now, the 007, that is by far the most common. I've found a key blank that sort of works, but it's not symmetrical on both sides, so I haven't been able to get it perfect. The best thing I've found to do is actually buy an Embark from Target Lock or a Travel Smart Conair from Myers. I don't know if you have those stores up here. You probably have a store that sells almost the same lock because these locks have the almost exact looking key. I'm sure it has made in the same manufacturer. I just don't know what they would call it up here. Do you have those stores, Target or Meyer?
Yeah, for 6 months.
Explain that one to me later. But anyway, you can get those there, and they have the nice feature of only being kind of properly spaced. Because keys have standards for how many depths there are in the cuts, and also how far the cuts are apart. And it's been really hard for me to hand file one out of one of those 1092 VRs, like I said. So here's an example of 007, and this is more of a cut-down 007, but some also look different. This one's 007. Oh, this one's kind of neat. That actually takes a card in the side to open it, like a dimple lock, but the TSA uses the 007 side of it. It's still, though, pretty pathetic to open up if you use the TSA side of it. Here's an example of a 007 where one side is the user, one side is the TSA. Here's another example. There's all sorts of variants and keyways. I think Deviant Olive on his site has more pictures. All right, classic ways into these before you make keys. There's raking it and picking it. Picking is when you apply a little bit of tension, and this is more of a pin tumbler than wafer. Pretty much wafers, I just always rake. You apply a little bit of tension, and you form a ledge between this plug and this outer cylinder. And there's this little lip there that you get the driver pin to hang on. And you do it single pin picking, because the holes that the pin stacks go in aren't drilled perfectly. There's also raking, where you basically just go in pseudo-randomly, kind of like fuzzing software, and move the pick up and down, don't twist it, up and down, in and out, and you can get it to function. And you see this person's single pin picking here. And eventually, once you get everything lined up at the shear line, you can turn the lock. If you want to know more about this later on, I probably can give some demos tomorrow. There's also bumping. Bumping is when you put a key in, you have it drilled down to the lowest cut down to the lowest levels for that type of key. And you pull it out one notch, you slam it with a hammer while applying light tension, and you can sometimes turn the lock. Never seen this work on a TSA lock. Most are way too small, and it doesn't really work on wafer locks, to my knowledge. It's pretty hit or miss, and I didn't bring any bump keys. Well, I brought bump keys with me, but no bump hammer and no lock I can actually, I think, open with them. If someone has a little, very lightweight, like a hammer you'd hit your knee with, bring it tomorrow. Or bring some locks tomorrow, for that matter. There's also something called shiving. I think other people give different names for it. I don't know if it's an official name for this. What this essentially is when you have a locking pawl, but the keyway is open all the way to the back. You see here, I have a little pick, and I've gone all the way to the back. This little tongue, this locking pawl, goes into the groove, but you can reach a pick in there and just move it aside and open it. And actually, my most expensive TSA lock, you can do that exact same thing with. Let me see if I can actually do that in an expedient fashion. I got to find a proper pick for doing it, though. Yeah, let's see. This may work out. Yeah, this one might work. Let's see if we can make it work. Yeah, this is my most expensive lock right now until my AirBolt gets here, which is more than a year away. And since you can just reach to the back of the lock, and there's a little tongue you can pull aside, and it's open. That's a $40 Louis Vuitton lock. Don't ask me why I spent that much on it. I'm just a weird kind of collector. The other one I ordered, I think, was more like 80 bucks. I ordered 2 of them. I will talk about them in a little bit, hopefully, if I have time. By the way, this shiving thing, you probably can't do if it has a ball bearing in it, and it needs to be an open keyway to the back. But strangely enough, a whole lot of these do have an open keyway to the back. Now, shimming is another technique where you take 2 pieces of very thin metal, you put it down both sides of the shackle, or one side of the shackle, depending on double-sided or not, and turn it, and you push aside the locking pawls. To go back, unfortunately, we kind of screwed up the shims I brought with me, so I probably can't do it here. I have a $60 electronic lock that you can shim easily. But unfortunately, we screwed up the rubber grommets on it, and it's not working so well right now. The way a shim would work is you'd fit a small piece of metal, shaped kind of like a shark's tooth down this, and you turn it until it engages this locking pawl and pushes it out of the way. Ask me tomorrow, and I can try to demonstrate that. There's also Jigglers. This is actually a Canadian company, Sparrow. It's one of my favorite companies. Them and Sarah Pick make some really great stuff. And the Jigglers are essentially tools you put in the lock, wiggle around, simulate a lot of different keys, and you use it as a tension tool and a pick at the same time, essentially. Really good for a lot of wafer locks. There's also a thing called decoding. And the way decoding works, and I don't think I have another slide for that, and I don't have my decoder with me. But essentially what you do is, in these little slots in between, if you look here, you'll notice these little gates. Well, you can put a very thin piece of metal down there and feel for those gates. And then when you get them all lined up, you get all, like in this case, 3 of them lined up together. You don't have the combination yet, but now with this lock, you only have 10 more tries to be able to open it, because it's going to be one of those 10. So basically, you can just get in there and decode it with that. And you see the gate right here. When you go through, that's the thing you're feeling for. You get them all lined up, and you just turn them all evenly. Now let's get to the actual subject of making keys. And by the way, all this stuff came through to Canada with me. The TSA checked it. They pulled it out, looked at it with all the lock. I had them all like in the same bag. And someone was wondering, well, are they going to freak out about this? Well, I don't think in most cases they even know what it is. But in this case, you can't really see it on this picture. These 3D printed ones actually have TSA written on them. And it looks like the keys they use. I mean, it really does look like the keys they use. And the lighting's not great for it, but you can. I don't know. All right. Now, as far as the photos leaking, yes, the photos can help, but you don't really need them. People talking about getting them online duplicated. They're probably not going to have the proper key blank to get the duplication done. That's been my biggest problem. So the way I made my first 007 was to tear down a lock. This particular model of Brinks, I opened it up, pulled things out, and I did this. I took a key from a different lock, in this case, Mbach and Conairs. I mentioned them before, and I found a key that was very close to what I knew the key to be. Because I'd put like, these keys in, and like, okay, this wafer is underlifted, this wafer is overlifted. Any place it's overlifted, you take a file, you file it down a little bit. So the ones on the left are the ones I filed down to make everything flush with the cylinder. The other ones are ones that, are no longer flush. Let me give a better example of that. That doesn't work. I probably don't have all the ones I need for this, but let's get this out. And 007 is by far the most common of them all. So what I did was, this is the inner plug. See how everything's raised up there on that side? That's probably actually the bottom. So when you put the proper key in, those pull out of the way, and it becomes smooth. And it locks into these grooves, and then you can turn it. So with it in there, it raises all the wafers to the proper height. Without it, it's stuck. So I basically, what I did was I saw which ones were overlifted. Like I'm trying to overlift some. See how some are overlifted? And I kept filing down until I get them all at the right height. And that's the simple way to make a duplicate key for a wafer lock if you can take it apart. And remember, all these locks are the same in that particular key standard. So these are the particular ones I bought. Go looking for those and with that particular key shape. I started filing them down. You see that one doesn't have a key in it. This one has a key in it, but it's the wrong key, and things are overlifted. And I kept filing down until I had it just about perfect. There's also 3D printing that people are doing. Unfortunately, a lot of these have been hit or miss with working. No one's made a 3D printed 06 yet. I only made one out of brass. Out of brass, I've only made, someone else has made a 1. I've made a 2, 4, and 7, and a 5. But yeah, Johnny and Xylotar and other people have been working on this. And also, there's also the problem with size issues. When people print them, they get them all sorts of different sizes. There's also a lot of breakage because it's plastic, not brass or steel. However, some of the ones that have been working, but then other people print ones from the same pattern and it doesn't work. I think in some cases what's happening is self-impressioning attack, where the pin that's binding pushes down and mars the plastic, and it makes it dip in a little deeper, and it ends up self-conforming to the lock and you're able to open it. All right, future locks that are coming out. Well, this one's already out. This is called the clip lock. They knew that TSA locks kind of suck, so what they did was make a lock that you can replace the shackle. So the TSA agent, if they actually looks at the instructions, cuts that, they can pull out the shackle, then they push the entire thing back in, and there's 2 places where it can lock on. So my understanding is. I haven't really seen any of these in stores, and I haven't bothered to order one, and you can order replacement shackles. Stanton Concepts came up with this one, where the TSA can cut this part, and it's like, several notches on this that they can cut, and then you can get, I believe, refills. So it's another lock you have to cut. It's probably more secure, but well, anything that involves the dial, you can probably still attack the same way. I don't have one yet. I don't know if they ever came out with it. Now this one's coming up. I like this. I think I dropped I don't know, 100. I don't know how much I dropped on it now. But this is an interesting little one. It uses your phone to unlock, and so it has that feature. It also has several other features that we'll talk about in a second. We don't know what Keyway it is. I actually mailed them to see, and they said the TSA was only licensing 006s and 007s as of now. Hopefully they'll go with the 006 because it's a lot harder, but they're looking to see if there might be more coming out soon. Also, really, it isn't the TSA that licenses it. My understanding it's Travel Sentry, but regardless. Another thing this has is a proximity alarm, so if it gets a certain distance away from your phone, a little alarm goes off. Also, they're supposed to have crowdsourced geolocation where everybody's phones that use the app will be looking for other people's locks, and when it sees it, it says, oh yeah, your lock's over here. That's going to rely, though, my understanding, on a lot of people using this lock. And I don't remember how it's cost. I want to say 80 bucks? Oh, great, I don't recall. It's expensive enough why many people are going to do it. Also, another thing you can do is revoke TSA key access. And if the lock is completely dead, you can use these 2 buttons to put in a button combination, which is hopefully semi-unlimited length. I think they said the battery's going to last for a year, I think. I don't really like the override system it has. This little cable you see, there's different ways you can lock on. You can either lock on zippers here, or you can take this cable out and lock through in a different way. And there's more information on an AirBolt. I've actually asked them to send me maybe some samples, and I'll do a free pen test on them. The body's made out of zinc, though, so probably in the end you might be able to melt it with a blowtorch, but you're not going to do that to luggage. 3 minutes. Random stuff. Key codes. I saw some key codes on the back of some of the locks. These key codes tell you what the cut depths are. If you look on a bunch of master locks, you also see them. If you see 2 with the same code, that means it's the same key. I just don't know what the depth standards are. I'm still looking for a good blank for the 007. I mean, I can get them out of some locks, but that's an expensive way because that's like $1 per blank as opposed to like 25 cents a blank. So I want to find a better way. These are 2 catalogs I order a lot of, I find a lot of blanks in, then I order from HL Flake. As far as the law is concerned in the United States, I have no idea up here in Canada, but do not duplicate seems to be a suggestion. Except for patented keyways, you can't make a patented keyway because someone still owns the patent on it. Mailbox locks apparently have a law against reproducing them, and locks used by the DoD. Oh, by the way, I also trolled Master Lock. Hey, Master Lock US, I want to duplicate the key for my luggage lock. Which blank do I tell the locksmith to use? Thanks. To maintain the integrity of the TSA oversight of the TSA accepted system, dupe keys aren't available on TSA locks. Sorry. Well, obviously, that ain't true. Also, here's a bunch of links, which you can find in the slides later on, or you can go watch the video online. Oh, quick announcement, DivvyCon's happening next year, I believe, September 20th through the 26th. Come on out, Louisville, Kentucky. Get your tickets early. And finally, are there any questions? But I'm essentially out of time, so ask me questions a little bit later tonight as I'm packing up, or come find me tomorrow. I'll probably be on a table someplace picking locks. Thank you much for your time.